Attention to the National Assembly, where the House of Representatives has retained a value-added tax VAT at 7.5% and rejected a staggered increase to 15% by the year 2030. It also rejected proposed reintroduction of inheritance tax under the guise of taxation of family income. National Assembly correspondent Joke Adisa reports.
After a week-long retreat, the Haddock Committee on Tax Reform Bills laid its reports on Tuesday. 48 hours later, the reports are the sole business of the day. Chairman of the committee, James Faleke, moves for the consideration of the reports and gives a synopsis of the recommendations. The Speaker commends the efforts of the committee, acknowledging that there was no dissenting voice among the members.
I've never seen in my history here in the National Assembly where a report is endorsed 100% unanimously by all members except these.
At the Committee of the Whole, the House carried out a clause-by-clause consideration of the recommendations on the 4 bills.
Clause 39.
For value-added tax purposes for states, it approved that 50% be distributed equally, 20% to be shared based on population, and 30% based on consumption.
There was a call for deletion of the proposed reintroduction of inheritance tax under the guise of taxation of family income, as this oversteps divine jurisdiction.
The House also agreed to retain the current 7.5% VAT as it rejected proposed staggered increase to 15% by 2030. Some of the lawmakers speak on the committee's efforts.
We also say thank you to Mr. President for considering it worthy to amend our tax laws. Our tax laws have been as old as 1959, some 1960-something.
What we did was an offshoot of the submissions that we got from the public.
The injection that Nigeria needs for it to move into the Committee of Nations has been applied. The House of Reps has sanctioned it, so we wait on the Senate to do the same.
The process was very transparent, and they engaged us from beginning. Even when there were reservations, both the chairman of the committee, both the consultant, both the executive adjusted to reflect the desire of Nigerian people.
The House gives approval to the appointment of 1 representative each from the 36 states on the board of the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill. The House of Representatives is satisfied with its legislative interventions on the tax bill so far, and as Nigerians await the passage of the bills and assent by President Bola Tinubu, hopes are that the benefits so canvassed in the bills will impact positively on their lives and the nation's economy. Joke Adisa, TVC News, Abuja.
Chief Lecturer, Nigerian Institute of Journalism, Jide Johnson, joins me on the news for more on this. Dr. Johnson, what do you make of the House of Reps' decision to retain value-added tax at 7.5% and rejecting a staggered increase to double it by the year 2030?
Well, that's listening to the yearnings and complaints of every Nigerian, trying to ensure that the views of Nigerians towards that particular tax policy is taken into consideration. And I think that's why they are the House of Representatives. You recall the controversy that surrounded this particular bill when it was initially introduced, but where you see the People's Assembly involved in the process, you can see what transparency can do and what it can bring to bear on a controversial issue like taxation. So to me, it did not come as a surprise, it came as a welcome development. And I think should be the approach between the executive to approach whatever executive bill they want to present before the National Assembly, either the House of Rep and the Senate all together, because that itself will enable you to avert any kind of public criticism or controversy that initially surrounded this particular bill when it was introduced. And you see the deliberation and the intervention of the representative of the people, one, in stopping the inheritance tax, two, in stopping the increase from 7% to 15% over a period of time. So that tells you that inputs from the constituents were taken into consideration, and that's the beauty of democracy, and that's why it's House of Representatives.
And the lawmakers are actually also, agreeing with the recommendations of the Nigeria Governors Forum, because, for instance, yes, they agree on 50% of the VAT being shared based on, equity, but then they want that those who generate the fund, like 30%, based on consumption, should actually be shared, based on consumption, as against 20%, which was proposed by the governors. What do you think about that? Is that about the fund going back to those who actually, generated it?
It's about fairness. It's about equity. Look, 50% on the base of equity, 20% on population, and then 20% on population and 30%. It tells you about the balance. It tells you about the critical stakeholder. You can see the involvement of critical stakeholder in taking us in us arriving at where we are today compared to where we were 6 months ago concerning this particular bill. So you could see that there's an harmonization of divergent views, and that harmonization has brought about a clean bill that will usually turn into the Act of Parliament when the Senate passes the same bill. So it's about listening to people. It's about listening and taking input from their constituents and getting every stakeholder involved. What is the base of getting revenue from the people when you put an extra burden on the neck of your citizenry? So I think in this regard, the House of Rep, the Governors Forum, and every other critical stakeholder ensure that they listen to the yearnings of their constituents, of their citizens, and that was taken into consideration in ensuring that we have this bill that we have before us now.
Okay, Dr. Johnson. Earlier, you spoke about the inheritance tax. The House has now rejected the proposed reintroduction of that category of tax under the guise of taxation of family income. But this is in place in other climes. What do you think?
Well, you could see that. Well, in other climes, for me, generally, I hate increases in taxation. Taxation stifles the economy. The regulation grows the economy, because when you reduce taxes, what you do is to provide a lot of disposable income in the hands of the people, which they can use to save. You can provide credits for small and medium scale enterprise that can make them to invest and create employment opportunity. And that's why you could see is the type of approach that is presently being adopted by the present administration in the United States of America. They are looking at ways in which anybody that is earning less than $150,000 annually, not paying any kind of taxes, they are looking at taking away property taxes and the rest of it. So as far as I'm concerned, what are the things that we could do to grow the economy? What are the things that we could do to ensure that there's a lot of income, discretionary income in the hands of the citizens that can help to grow the economy? It's not about taxation. Taxation stifles economic growth. That's the reality. So right. I mean, I was so glad that was thrown away, because it will amount to double taxation. If you look at it in the last few years, there are different types of taxations that have been imposed, whether direct or indirect taxes, in terms of electricity tariff, in terms of removal of educational subsidy, in terms of removal of petroleum subsidy, and the rest of it. So if you bring that inheritance tax, and then you also increase the VAT, and people are still paying their income taxes, then whether you like it or not, we have multiplication of taxes that are being paid by the citizenry to stifle economic growth. That's the reality.
All right, Dr. Johnson. Chief Lecturer, Nigerian Institute of Journalism, Dr. Jide Johnson, thank you very much for your time on TVC News at 1.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.